name is Isaac Kahuna, and the title of my presentation, as you can see, is Desecrating a Reputation, the Status of Native Hawaiian Medical Practitioners in 19th Century Hawaii. And so my thesis is as follows. Kahuna Lapa'au, or indigenous medical practitioners in Hawaii, were labeled as outcasts in a society where they were once revered and respected due to the religious stigmas placed upon traditional Hawaiian practices in the 19th century, and the plethora of criticism plastered throughout the columns of the Hawaiian language newspapers denouncing the knowledge and methods of the Kahuna Lapa'au. And so, before going, I wanted to share why this is important. Personally, as I know this area, a native of this area, growing up, as a child, you hear whenever you hear anything Hawaiian, there's a negative stigma attached to it, especially when it comes to kahuna. And however, once I entered into the college system and I had the opportunity to read the works of our 19th century Hawaiian scholars such as Sarneo Kamakau and John Papa'i'i, it's a totally different narrative. And so I wanted to figure out where and how that disconnect happened, where the Hawaiian people who once revered this class of people as such highly ranked individuals, how they fell from that pedestal and became outcasts. And so this is just a general guide for my presentation. At first I want to define or look at the evolution of the definition of the word kahuna and kahuna lapa'au from the 19th century to the 20th century, and then look at the foundations of what kahuna were in ancient Hawaii, and then talk about how the breakdown of the couple system and the introduction of Christianity to Hawaii in 1819, 1820 affected their status as highly ranked individuals in Hawaiian society. And then after that, look at the newspaper articles that were published in the later half of the 19th century that criticized and stigmatized these native medical practitioners. And then also look at the attempts of Kamehameha V, Laka Kapuaiwa, his attempt to quell the public's opinion and kind of put an end to the stigmatization through the creation of a Papaola Hawaii, or Hawaiian Board of Health. And then look at the results of these actions and see if anything was changed and where kahuna lapa'au stand in the 20th and 21st century. So defining the word kahuna lapa'au, I first looked at the Hawaiian language dictionaries, looking at what Andrews had first published in 1836, and this is what, as we know, the first published Hawaiian dictionary of sorts. And he simply defines kahuna as an expert in a particular profession, and when you add a qualifying adjective such as lapa'au, it becomes to mean a doctor or roughly it translates to doctor. And then I came across in my research an article written in the 20th century, around 1940, by a scholar by the name of Charles W. Ken. And he basically provides a historiography of sorts of scholars during that time, such as Pia Naiha, John Wise, and other notable scholars of that time, and looking at how they defined kahuna. And what I really appreciated about what he had to say was that in his first sentence, he says, let's look at kahuna, the word, as it was used in ancient Hawaii and not now. So it kind of gives an indication to the fact that society has come to view kahuna in a different light, but he's taking the time to look at it as it originally was and what they originally were about, basically. And then our most recent dictionary by Kukui and Elbert, published in 1986. When looking at that definition, it's a stark difference. She and Elbert define kahuna as a priest, wizard, sorcerer, very things that in a Christian perspective would seem very out of place and not really well respected. And she adds in the ending of that definition in 1845, kahuna lapa'au was, or the word kahuna, along with its qualifying adjective, was used to describe an expert. So even she is recognizing that the word kahuna has evolved to mean something that is out of context in Hawaiian society. And then before moving on, I just wanted to clarify the difference between a kahuna lapa'au and a kahuna la'au lapa'au. For those of us who are familiar with these two words, the term kahuna la'au lapa'au is much more popular, and it is oftentimes confused when you hear kahuna lapa'au. However, a kahuna la'au lapa'au is just a subcategory of the entire healing profession, oihana lapa'au, which is what a kahuna lapa'au practices. And so a kahuna la'au lapa'au is expert in the utilization of plants to make medicine to heal others. And there's other kahunas such as a punahaha, which what he or she would do is just through feeling throughout the body would be able to diagnose a certain disease and then refer the person to a kahuna la'au lapa'au or another kahuna in oihana lapa'au. So what was a kahuna lapa'au in ancient Hawaii? I wanted to read an excerpt from Malu's Kamo'olelo Hawaii. So in ancient times, the medical profession was an appease to the gods and ancestors of old to heal the sick. If one became ill, he or she would seek out the advice of a medical practitioner and offer him a sacrifice to give to Ma'iola, the deity of the profession. And so I also looked at what Kamakau had to say. It's kind of the same. The names of the gods may be a bit different, but the concept of it is that the concept was that illness in ancient Hawaii did not come from within the body. It was sent from your family deities or the akua because of a transgression that a particular person had did. And so what this person would have to do is seek the knowledge of the kahuna lapa'au to figure out a way to become balanced again, to become pono. Because of their wrong transgression, they were made imbalanced, if that makes sense. And so the arrival of Christianity, and before that, the abolishment of the couple system in 1819. So the couple system was a structure that pretty much legitimized the authority of the kahuna lapa'au because kahuna lapa'au acted as the medium between the gods and the maka'inana and the li'i. And so after the couple system was abolished, that kind of legitimacy was taken away from them, and it kind of shook the relationship that kahuna had with the general public. And then when missionaries arrived in Hawaii in 1820 and imposed a new religion upon the people, it even more so took away from what the kahuna lapa'au was trying to do, and because everything that a kahuna lapa'au did was embedded in the old religion, in the Hawaiian religion, in Hawaiian practices. And in a Christianity viewpoint, that was not okay. And so Christianity was not disseminated instantly, and Hawaiians did not take to Christianity instantly as popular narrative suggests. However, after several years and the conversion of several li'i, Christianity did become the popular religion amongst the public, especially when Ka'ahumanu was officially converted to Christianity. And she utilized this influence of Christianity to outlaw and sort of demonize the old religion. And so around 1830, I believe it's 1831, the exact year, that she proclaims an edict that denounces and outlaws the old religion and traditional practices such as hula and the worshiping of idols. And within the worshiping of idols, you have the Kahuna Lapa'au, because that's kind of the old religious aspect of Hawaii. So after these edicts are issued, kahuna are kind of forced underground per se, to practice their craft. And it is in 1848 that we see the first criticism in Hawaiian language newspapers against Kahuna Lapa'au, labeling them as mea ho'opunipuni, which translates to a liar, a thief, or a false doctor in this sense, because this is in reference to Kahuna Lapa'au. Prior to this, there was mention of Kahuna ho'opunipuni, but it's more so relating to stories within the Bible. So this is the actual first, as far as I know in my research, the actual first article that criticizes Hawaiian medical practitioners. And so this is just an example of one of the articles that I read. The basic narrative is that a person would write to the Hawaiian language newspapers and say that they either sought the help of a Kahuna Lapa'au or they heard stories of such. And they would define what a Kahuna Lapa'au would do and then place emphasis on the fact that it is totally not Christian, don't pay attention to this, and seek the enlightened ways of the Lord. And they would always, or all of these articles ended in the death of whoever the Kahuna Lapa'au was trying to treat. But the main emphasis was on the paganistic practice of Kahuna Lapa'au during this time. So this article, Kahuna ho'opunipuni I ho'ahali ke like ia me kahikili pamalo, it translates to a false doctor that resembles thunder without rain, or as we know, dry thunder, which is kind of hard to fathom, if there's no clouds, where can the thunder come from? So that's the perspective that you get when just reading the title alone. It speaks of a Kahuna Lapa'au named Ka'ai, a female medical practitioner. And in this article, the author makes specific reference to the fact that before, she was an excellent Kahuna Lapa'au. Everybody, for the most part, who came to seek her help was indeed healed. However, due to this one instance where she wasn't able to lapa'au or heal her patient, she is labeled a kahuna ho'opunipuni, or a false doctor. And so, this is quite a lengthy article. I think it takes up an entire column in the Hawaiian language newspaper. But that is the basic narrative, and it ends pretty much with the fact that you need to stop, don't pay attention to Kahuna Lapa'au, seek the ways of the Lord, like I was saying earlier. However, and this is the only article of support that I have found, but there was a supporter by the name of Waimanalo that retorts what this author was saying in the previous article about Ka'ai. And she basically goes to show that how can you say this person who was such a good Kahuna Lapa'au before, and due to the fact that she wasn't able to successfully heal her patient now, how can you label them as a false doctor? And she she points to the fact that, or begs the question, are foreign doctors labeled in the same way if they are unable to successfully tend to a patient? And another point to point out is that in this article, Waimanalo criticized or calls the author of this article, who is John Kimo, sorry for not mentioning that earlier. She calls John Kimo, or he or she, I'm not too sure which gender it is. She calls John Kimo a keiki, a child that has just been weaned from strong language that is utilized within this article, and it begs to the question that is Waimanalo an elderly person that was around before or prior to the abolishment of the couple system, and or is it just because she has actually witnessed successful attempts of this person, of this Hunalapa'au Ka'i, and for that reason she's, standing up and supporting what Ka'i is doing. And so, several years later, after these articles are published, they're still continually being published, but Kamehameha V notices what's happening, and basically, put it basically, he's in kind of a shock, because he's labeled as, or he's known in history as one of the last chiefs of the olden type, caring for the traditions of Old Hawaii. So what he does is in 1860, he proclaims, or he puts into law, the creation of a Pahola Hawaii, which is a Hawaiian Board of Health. And their sole responsibility is the oversight of these kahuna lapa'au. In this law, a licensing process is created in order to allow kahuna lapa'au, or medical practitioners, to legally tend to patients in the public. They would be put through a rigorous testing process and interviews to ensure that their knowledge was credible. And so this was the attempt that Kamehameha V wanted to do. So this is the actual law, and in the beginning, he lists his reasonings of why he wants to set this law into action. So it translates basically to, his reasonings are that he sees that the countryside is left helpless with no doctor to care for them. There's a lot of suspicion against our own native medical professionals, but it is only, however, right that we allow any expert to have the opportunity to help us, because in the background, disease is wiping out the Hawaiian population. And so, Kamehameha, 3 years prior to this, he sent into law the word just left me. He sent into law forcing patients who contracted leprosy to 12 papa. So he knows that disease is running rampant in Hawaiian society, and so he is trying to find a way to allow kahuna lapa'au to have their attempt, or to see if what they know can combat what is ravaging the population. And on a side note that I haven't put on these slides, Kamehameha V had a house kahuna lapa'au within his own court by the name of Ka'imwa'a. It was a female kahuna lapa'au, and it was said that this kahuna had a strong influence over Kamehameha V in regards to disease and that sort. So this is an example of an actual license that we can see from the kingdom. Like I said before, it was basically a licensing process that was in charge of the oversight of kahuna lapa'au in an attempt to legitimize their work. And once a kahuna lapa'au, or medical practitioner, was licensed, they were stipulated to, or they were required, to keep a record book of patients seen or treated, and to seek to renew their license every year. And so, I'm sorry, I thought I put an example. But what they would have to keep track of was the name of the patient they saw, where they were from, the disease they had, the medicine that they prescribed to the patient, and whether or not they lived. And according to the books that are sitting in the Hawaii State Archives, majority of them did. The only ones that are not, the kahuna lapa'au was not sure of, were the ones that were sent to Kalaupapa. So what came of this? In an article written in 1869 by Ike Makla, he writes of Kahuna Lapa'au just filling the business office of the Hawaiian Board of Health. And he makes note that they are all seeking to obtain a license from the Hawaiian Board of Health. However, there is still a stigmatizing tone to this article. In the later half, he describes the appearance of these people seeking to gain a license. He notes that their skin is cracked, they have blisters, but, and this is my opinion on other research that I've found, I think that their appearance was due to an over-excessive drinking of ava, which was a problem at the time. And so, ava is one of the medicines that were used as well, but it was abused like alcohol during that time. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. That's right. So it was a very stigmatizing tone. He begs the question, how can we trust people who look like this, who seem like they can't even tend to their own health? How can we trust them with the care of our people, of other people? And so this is an example of an advertisement of a Kahuna Lapa'au who was approved to practice in the Hawaiian Kingdom after 1868 by the name of Ohai, which is basically saying, I'm a Kahuna Lapa'au. I've been through the process of the Papo'ola Hawaii, the Hawaiian Board of Health, and I've been licensed. Please come to see me if you have any illness or if anything is bothering you. Oh, I have an example. So this is the example of the ledger book that Kahuna Lapa'au were required to take or keep, and it's by G.W.D. Halimani, I believe is the name. And he or she, I can't remember at the moment, he or she is from Hamakua and practiced during the time of the 1870s, if I'm not mistaken. So, Hima'u no Ia, it kind of just translates to it was worth a shot, and I labeled it a continuance of ignorance, because Kahuna Lapa'au was still stigmatized. After all this effort to try and rebuild the reputation, they were still stigmatized and in a way demonized because of the Christian, the religious stigmas that were placed upon them. But it comes under a different guise. It is no longer under the title of Kahuna Ho'opunipuni. It is under the title of He Kahuna Lapa'au Laikini Ole, which translates to an unlicensed doctor. And so these articles continue into the 20th century, the early 20th century. And so going back to the reasoning on why I wanted to do this is clear to see how Kahuna evolved or were stigmatized, and that's how it affected their reputation and how the general public views Kahuna in the 20th century and to some point today as well. So just touching upon the status of holiday doctors, I kind of touched upon it earlier with that article by Waimanalo that was supporting Ka'ai. In an article by Leimomi Otana, she focuses on letters that were sent to the newspaper in a specific year, 1863, and she begs the same question as Waimanalo, and goes even further to say that foreign doctors were not successful. They were on the same level as Kahuna Lapa'au. They had the same success rate. Medicine was not what we know today, and those revolutions did not take place until later on in the early 20th century. So the status of Kahuna Lapa'au since the 19th century, so there's several perspectives, they're kind of conflicting. And so here's one documented in Kukui, Haydards, and Lee's Nanai Kikumu, Volume 2. Kukui recounts a time when she was conversing with a kupuna, or an elder of hers, and Pukui was explaining to this elder that her family came from a long line of kahuna, or medical practitioners. And as soon as she uttered the word kahuna, she said that that elder immediately said, "Don't talk about those horrible things." So it's sad to see that this is what kahuna have come to be, being labeled and being stigmatized as a mysterious dark figure in our society. But, and that was my conclusion, but to offer a different perspective on how kahuna are viewed, this account is taken from June Gutmanis's Kahuna Lapa'au, La'au Lapa'au. In her introduction, she recounts an article that was written in the 1950s, I believe, in the Honolulu Advertiser. And she talks about how a woman was sick, feeling sick, or I think it was more than sick. It was like really sick. So she goes to her doctor, and the doctor is confounded and can't diagnose whatever illness she has. So the only other option that she gives her is, or he diagnoses her with what he called Kanaka sickness. And he told her that you need to seek the help, or you need to go elsewhere to find help. And she knew what that meant. She needed to go seek a kahuna lapa'au. And it talks about how much joy she had at being given that opportunity to do that, and how her family embraced the fact that they could have this opportunity to go and see a kahuna lapa'au. And it goes on further to explain how the kahuna himself or herself set up the process to run this procedure, and that certain things are needed. The family went out to get it, brought it back. The kahuna set everything up, and it said that he or she ate, the family ate, he slept, and he got up the next day and came out with a prognosis, and prescribed the treatment for for this woman. And it was said that he did his prayers to his gods in the Hawaiian religion, and they gave him or her the answer to heal this woman. And the account ends with her being healed. She did what the kahuna had told her to do, and through the support of her family and the kahuna, she lived to tell the tale. And so it's not clear as to how kahuna are viewed today, because more and more people are seeking to educate themselves on this topic. And so hopefully, once a great enough number of people are able to do so, that work can be disseminated to kind of change the narrative that's been perpetuated. Mahalo.
Questions?
Thank you, Dale. So in the section where you're talking about stigmatization of kahuna lapa'au, and you're talking a great deal about the Christian influence there, and I totally agree with you there, but I'm also wondering how much do the foreign physicians have in that stigmatization? And it's going to be a difficult question because you're ending with the story of the foreign, or the Hawaii doctor saying
Right.
it's Kanaka sickness, but so something's happened in that 100 years or so. But in the 19th century, do you think the incoming foreign physicians had an influence on the stigmatization of the kahuna lapa'au?
Definitely. There is an account in Kaikendall. He talks about Dr. Hillebrand and his work at the Queen's Hospital, and talking about how the native people are not seeking the help of the hospital because they're relying. So even then, it's still a conflicting perspective, because he's claiming that the native Hawaiians are still clinging to kahuna lapa'au and not seeking the help of foreign doctors. So it's hard to understand how the popular narrative is so, it goes so against what you see, even from foreign accounts. I hope that answered your question.
By requiring the Kahuna Lafa'au to renew their license every year, which if I'm not wrong, this also came at a cost to them, do you think that this was an effort to further hinder the practice?
That's a good question. It didn't specify what the cost was to seek a license. However, I think just the fact that in order to renew their license, they needed to keep such a detailed account of how they treated patients. That could have been a hindrance if a kahuna was lazy and didn't, or left out people, but these people came to the Pahu'ola Hawaii and said, wait, he didn't heal me, then of course their license could be at risk for revocation. But yeah, I hope that answered.
I'll finish.
As you already learned about Kahuna La'au, do you practice this La'au La'au at home to your family or lifestyle?
I don't do personally. I don't think I have enough knowledge in order to carry out that. There are detailed accounts on what kahuna used to do, kahuna la'au la'au they used to do, and the medicines that they used to prepare in order to do so, in order to treat these certain types of sicknesses. But I wouldn't know, because there's so much of the religious aspect that goes into it, not just the medicinal part. I wouldn't know where to start and even try to.
Very good. Okay, last question. Yeah, very good.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you believe that the stigmatization of Kahuna La'au kind of helps to reinforce that another part of the colonialization of the Hawaiian Kingdom? Because again, even though the kapu system is eliminated, now you have to eliminate the professions that rely upon that epistemological worldview that's built within the kapu system. I mean, it's not, I don't believe it's deliberate, but do you feel that in a way, like attacking a profession helps to, again, colonize the people?
Definitely, because I think, when these people have a set belief that this person can do such and such action and will be successful at it, and when you go to see them, they're not, or you see these accounts that they're not, and it's not just one, but multiple